Welcome, dear friends, to a tale of redemption and unexpected love, where the past and present collide in a heart-wrenching journey that will remind you of the power of second chances and the unbreakable bonds of family. Enjoy the story. Ethan Spencer stared out the window of his luxurious penthouse apartment, the skyline of New York City sprawling before him. His mother's words still echoed in his ears, a conversation he'd had countless times over the past few months. "Ethan, darling, why do you keep torturing yourself?" Margaret Spencer's voice was filled with concern. "I loved Kate too, but it's been nearly 10 years since you last saw her. And now she's gone. Why do you insist on visiting her grave every single day?" Ethan turned to face his mother, his haggard appearance a stark contrast to the sleek, modern decor of his home. "Mom, don't you understand? I feel so guilty. My soul is on fire. I can't sleep peacefully. And Kate never got to tell me something important. I need to figure out what it was." Margaret stomped her foot in frustration. "Son, I'm starting to think you're losing your mind. Do you expect Kate to speak to you from beyond the grave and tell you what she couldn't in life?" Ethan rubbed his face with his hands, feeling the stubble that had grown over the past few days. "No, Mom, of course not. I feel like I need this right now." Margaret sank onto the plush leather sofa, her voice softening. "That poor girl, she wasted away. Yes, you share some blame, but what's done is done. You can't change the past. Kate is gone, but you're still here. You need to live in the present, not dwell on memories of the past." "I understand, Mom," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll go today, and then I'll try to pull myself together." As Margaret left, Ethan's mind wandered back to the day he first met Kate. It had been a chance encounter, but he had fallen head over heels instantly. Kate was unlike anyone he'd ever met, modest, quiet, and so incredibly gentle. Some people found her strange, but Ethan saw her for the sensitive soul she was. At the time, Kate had no family left. Her mother had passed away when Kate was just 17, leaving her to fend for herself. Ethan had proposed after just 3 months of dating, certain he had found his soulmate. But then came the night that changed everything. His ex-girlfriend Mia, who had dumped him months before, suddenly decided she wanted him back. When Mia called him in tears, begging for help, Ethan foolishly went to her, thinking she was in some kind of trouble. What followed was like a scene from a bad movie. Mia had drugged him, and he woke up in her bed. And there, standing in the doorway, was Kate, her eyes filled with a pain that Ethan would never forget. Kate had fled, and by the time Ethan had gathered his wits and his clothes, she was gone. It was the last time he ever saw her. For months he searched for her everywhere. But Kate had vanished without a trace. She didn't even come back for her belongings. Ethan's life spiraled into a pit of regret and self-loathing. Then, 6 months ago, came the phone call that shattered his world all over again. Ethan's phone rang in the dead of night, jolting him from a restless sleep. The voice on the other end was hesitant, apologetic. "Mr. Spencer? I'm so sorry to disturb you at this hour. I'm Dr. Sarah Johnson from Central Hospital. We have a patient here. She claims to know you. She has no identification, but she asked us to call you. She says her name is Katie." Ethan bolted upright, his heart pounding. "Kate? What hospital? What's wrong with her?" Dr. Johnson's voice was grave. "Central Hospital, Mr. Spencer. I'm afraid the situation is dire. She has advanced stage cancer. We can't do much except make her comfortable in her final hours." "Hours?" Ethan's voice was a strangled cry. How did this happen?" "She came to us too late, Mr. Spencer. I'm so sorry." Ethan raced to the hospital, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He had to see her, had to make things right somehow. When he entered Kate's room, his heart shattered. She was a shadow of her former self, rail-thin and pale, but her eyes, those eyes that had captivated him years ago, were still the same, filled with a pain that went beyond physical suffering. "Ethan," Kate's voice was barely audible. "I waited for you. I need to tell you something." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, taking her frail hand in his. What is it, Katie? Tell me anything. Kate's breathing was labored, her forehead damp with sweat. I have to. But before she could finish, her body suddenly arched in pain. Ethan jumped up to call for help, and by the time the doctors rushed in, it was too late. Kate was gone, taking her secret with her. Ethan felt as if he'd been run over by a truck, over and over again. He refused to leave her side until his mother arrived to gently guide him home. The hospital staff knew nothing about Kate's life before she arrived. They said she had come in on her own, transferred from another facility. Ethan was left with more questions than answers, and a guilt that threatened to consume him entirely. Now, months later, Ethan found himself making the same journey he had made every day since Kate's funeral. He stopped at a small liquor store to buy a bottle for the cemetery caretaker, a small bribe to ensure Kate's grave was well tended. As he entered the store, he was hit by a wave of noise. Someone was yelling, the shrill voice grating on Ethan's already frayed nerves. He quickly grabbed what he needed and headed for the exit, but then he stopped short. He realized who was yelling, and at whom. A massive security guard in an ill-fitting uniform had a death grip on the shoulder of a little girl, no more than 8 years old. The guard was bellowing at her, his face red with anger. The child looked like she had been living on the streets. Her clothes were too big, probably hand-me-downs, and she had a haunted look in her eyes. In her arms, she clutched a bag of candy like it was a lifeline. Ethan felt a surge of anger. How dare this man terrorize a child like this? He strode over, his voice sharp. "What do you think you're doing, speaking to a child like that?" The guard turned to Ethan, his grip on the girl not loosening. "Mind your own business, buddy. This little thief needs to learn a lesson." The little girl spoke up, her voice barely audible. "It's the first time, I swear. They were my mom's favorite." The guard scoffed. "See? Probably got drunk parents sending her out to steal for their habit." The girl shook her head vehemently, but winced as the guard's fingers dug deeper into her shoulder. Ethan's patience snapped. "Let her go right now. I'll pay for whatever she took. Just release her." The guard named an outrageous sum, probably more than all the candy in the store was worth. But Ethan didn't argue. He pulled out his wallet and handed over the cash. As soon as the guard let go, the little girl vanished into the crowd. Ethan sighed, hoping he had done the right thing. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this girl's story than met the eye. By the time Ethan finally made it to the cemetery, he was emotionally drained. The incident at the store had shaken him more than he cared to admit. As he approached Kate's grave, he noticed something that made him stop in his tracks. There, on top of the headstone, was a small bag of candy, the exact same kind the little girl had been clutching in the store. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? "Did you know my mom?" Ethan turned slowly, not wanting to startle the speaker. There, standing just outside the small fence surrounding Kate's grave, was the little girl from the store. "Oh, it's you," she said, recognition dawning in her eyes. "Thank you for helping me earlier. I'm sorry I ran off. I really wanted to bring these to Mom." Ethan's mind was reeling. "Your mom? You mean Kate was your mother?" The girl nodded. "I'm Lily. Mom loved these candies. We used to buy them together sometimes when we could afford it." Ethan felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. "Lily," he said, his voice hoarse. "How old are you?" "I'm 9, Lily replied. "Well, 9 and 5 months, actually." The implications hit Ethan like a ton of bricks. 9 years and 5 months? That would mean... "Lily," he said carefully, "what happened to your mom? Where have you been living?" Lily's face fell. "Mom got sick. We were living with old Mrs. Valentine. Mom cooked and cleaned for her in exchange for a place to stay. But when Mom got too sick to work, Mrs. Valentine kicked us out." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. "We spent a few nights at the bus station, but they chased us away. Then Mom got really bad. She took me to a children's home, said I should stay there for a while. She promised she'd come back, but..." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "Oh, Lily, I'm so sorry. I ran away from the home when I found out Mom was gone," Lily continued. "I've been hiding out here. It was pure luck that I found Mom's grave." Ethan's mind was spinning. This was what Kate had been trying to tell him. She had been trying to tell him about their daughter. "Lily," he said gently, "I knew your mom a long time ago. We were very close. Would you like to come home with me? My mother's there too. We can get you cleaned up, give you a good meal. What do you say?" Lily considered for a moment, then nodded. "I guess so. It's getting hard out here, and they'll catch me sooner or later anyway." As they walked to Ethan's car, he couldn't help but notice how much Lily looked like Kate. But there was something else familiar about her features too, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Ethan's mother Margaret was surprised to say the least when they arrived home with Lily in tow. But to her credit, she took it all in stride. "Well, hello there," she said warmly. "I'm Margaret, and you must be—" "Lily," the girl replied shyly. Margaret's eyes widened slightly as she took in Lily's appearance, but she quickly recovered. "Well, Lily, why don't we get you cleaned up? Then we can all have a nice meal together. How does that sound?" As Margaret led Lily away, Ethan collapsed onto the couch, his mind whirling. Could it be true? Could Lily really be his daughter? When Margaret returned to the living room, her face was serious. "Ethan, that child, she looks just like you did at that age." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know, Mom. I think she might be my daughter. Kate's and mine." Margaret sat down heavily. "Oh, Ethan, what are we going to do?" "We're going to take care of her," Ethan said firmly. "She's family. Whether she's mine biologically or not, she's Kate's daughter. We owe it to Kate to look after her." Over the next few days, Ethan, Margaret, and Lily fell into a routine. Lily blossomed under their care, her haunted look slowly fading. But Ethan knew they needed answers. A week after Lily came into their lives, Ethan decided it was time to visit old Mrs. Valentine. He needed to know the full story of what had happened to Kate and Lily. When they arrived at the rundown apartment building, Mrs. Valentine answered the door with a scowl. "What do you want?" she snapped. Ethan took a deep breath. "Mrs. Valentine, I'm here about Kate and Lily. I need to know what happened." The old woman's eyes narrowed. "And who are you supposed to be?" I was close to Kate, and I think I might be Lily's father." Mrs. Valentine barked out a harsh laugh. "Well, ain't that something? You show up now after all this time?" She reluctantly let them in, the apartment smelling of stale cigarette smoke and cheap air freshener. "Kate showed up here years ago," Mrs. Valentine explained. "Pregnant, no papers, nowhere to go. I let her stay in exchange for work. She had the baby here, quick birth, no time for a hospital. I used to be a nurse, so we managed." Ethan's heart clenched at the thought of Kate going through that alone. "So you're the dad, huh?" Mrs. Valentine eyed him suspiciously. "Well, I suppose you'll be wanting to pay me back for all those years I housed them." Ethan pulled out his checkbook without hesitation. "Name your price." As they were leaving, Mrs. Valentine called out, "Wait, Kate left something here. A notebook. She was always writing in it." She handed Ethan a worn, leather-bound journal. "Might as well take it. No use to me." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan sat down with Kate's journal. His hands trembled as he opened it. The first entry was dated shortly after they had met. "I met someone today. His name is Ethan, and I think I'm falling in love." Ethan read through the night, tears streaming down his face as he relived their relationship through Kate's eyes. Her joy at their early days together, her devastation at finding him with Mia, her fear and determination when she discovered she was pregnant. The entries after Lily's birth were sporadic and heartbreaking. Kate wrote of her struggles, her love for Lily, and her regret at not telling Ethan about their daughter. The final entry, dated just a month before Kate's death, was simple and gut-wrenching. "God, please watch over my little girl." As dawn broke, Ethan closed the journal, his face wet with tears. He stood by the window, watching the city come to life. Kate was gone. He had to accept that now. But Lily was here, his daughter, Kate's daughter, a living, breathing part of the woman he had loved and lost. He heard a soft footstep behind him. "Ethan, did you not sleep at all?" It was his mother, concern etched on her face. Ethan turned to her. "No, Mom. I was reading Kate's journal." He took a deep breath. "Lily is definitely my daughter, and Kate's. We have to make this right, Mom. For Kate, For Lily. Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes. Of course, darling. We'll do whatever it takes. Later that day, Ethan sat Lily down for a talk. Lily, he said gently, there's something I need to tell you. Something about your mom and about me. Lily looked at him curiously. What is it? Ethan took a deep breath. Lily, I'm your father. Your mom and I were together a long time ago before you were born. I didn't know about you until now, or I would have come for you both, I swear. Lily was quiet for a long moment. You're my dad? She finally said. But why didn't you come before? You could have helped Mom. Ethan felt his heart breaking all over again. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Your mom and I, we lost touch. I didn't know where she was or that you existed. If I had known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you both. Lily considered this, her young face serious. Adults make things so complicated, she sighed. So, does this mean I don't have to go back to the children's home? Ethan pulled her into a hug. Never. You're home now, Lily, with your family. As Lily hugged him back, Ethan felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He had lost so much time, made so many mistakes. But here, in this moment, he had a chance to make things right. He silently vowed to Kate, wherever she was, that he would be the best father he could be to their daughter. He would make sure Lily knew how much her mother had loved her,